Hello, and welcome to the Vibrant Systems YouTube channel. This is the, I think, fourth video that I'm posting to kind of talk about my journey developing as a consultant and what's really emerged as important parts of that journey and where I fit in this greater system. So, my name is Danielle Hauk. Vibrant Systems does values based and narrative based consulting. And this means that we really want to find, or rather, I really want to find out what brings you to life, what makes your story different. And then when we can move from that grounded place, we can make strategic decisions that are going to help you navigate these chaotic times we're living in. So that's just a little bit about me. And what I really want to talk about today is how critical community community building is, especially at this time, as more and more facets of higher level systems become chaotic, uncertain, unpredictable, or fear based in whichever way. When those systems start to be operated by anxiety, it is even more important to root back into the communities around us. So that can include the town or municipality that you live in. It can include a club you're a part of, or like an egg society. It can include your online community to an extent. It can include your family, and so on. Community is very, very broad, and really any group of people that you regularly interact with, whether that's at work, during your leisure hours, or through family or otherwise, any group of people you regularly interact with is a community. And so what I'm going to talk about is pretty much relevant to any space we're regularly a part of. And one of the things I have witnessed in my years working in the community development and nonprofit space is that it's not always easy to do the things that we know are best for our communities. And a lot of this comes down to the resources that are available to us, or rather, often aren't available to us. So, for example, a lot of nonprofits or community organizations require external funding to be able to do big projects like creating a new rec center or implementing a really helpful program or continuing services in the long term. And a lot of this funding in Alberta comes from the provincial government. Some of it comes from the federal government, but not as much. And a little bit of it can come from private investors or funders. But it's not always easy to access. And in a province with so many amazing nonprofits and community organizations out there, this funding that is finite, it's limited, can be very, very hard to access because it's competitive. Everybody's trying to do what's best for their community, and that means that you're going up against, other organizations or nonprofits that might have more resources than you. Maybe they have a dedicated grant writer. Maybe they have, years of research to back their grant applications up to support what they want to do. And that's not necessarily accessible to everybody. Not everybody, especially in small or rural or remote communities, has access to these services. Even, for example, neighborhood organizations can really, really make a strong impact on the life and quality of life of the people who live in that neighborhood. But because they're so small, and depending on, the city or town they live in, they might not have that same amount of access as, say, a nonprofit that's been running for 5 to 10 years or longer. And the unfortunate part about this, from what I've seen and the work I've done, is it really limits the diversity of services and organizations that are available to us as a people. And the biggest problem with limiting this diversity is, of course, that creates situations where there's not support for every person because different people have different needs, have different backgrounds, have different interests. And we're all worthy of these supports, but that doesn't mean our current system makes it easy. And what I see as a consultant, and especially as a private consultant, like I would like to be paid for my services too, right? I know the value that I bring, but even my services for the rate they're going, which is much lower than the average consultant's rate, it's not feasible. It's not accessible, and it really damages the extent that communities can actually support one another. Because the other side of the coin is that as economic growth is stalling, as wages aren't climbing to match inflation, as our buying power goes down as citizens with inflation and whatnot, we need to work more, and we need to work more for money. And that cuts into really, really important and critical time that we might otherwise spend volunteering at these community organizations. So not only can these organizations not access the funding that they need to operate, but their free labor, their volunteer, the social capital that's been so critical, especially in small and rural communities, is disappearing because our volunteers are also being pressured to change their focus, change their values to survive, right? I'm not blaming anybody for not volunteering when you're working 40 plus hours a week to just put food on the table and support your own family. But it does have a very distinct effect in eroding our communities, our social capital, and how we can support one another. And why am I bringing this up other than to just bring awareness of these different factors that are, maybe if you've noticed the nonprofits in your community aren't operating at a level that they used to operate, or maybe you are seeing people volunteering less. Like, I am bringing awareness to that because it is an important thing to pay attention to. But it's also because this is why it's important for people in my position to offer content or tools or material that are helpful to these organizations that help relieve some of the burden that they're under without attaching a monetary value to it. And as a consultant, especially one who's just really, like, I've been doing this for a year, but in a lot of ways I am just starting this work that I'm doing. And there's that pull between wanting to be financially independent and successful and paid for my credentials, my worth, and all that. But there's also this urge to help these communities that are in need of this support, and understanding that not everybody can pay for that. And so that's why for people in my position, it is important to offer some sort of free content, publicly available content to support these organizations and these communities, because the work they're doing is important regardless of whether they can pay for it or not. And that just kind of goes for each of us, as we're all worthy regardless of the money behind us. Society often doesn't support that worth, and there's a lot of self-limiting beliefs to navigate in that economic development sphere, but it's not any less true. So that is to say, some of the services that I offer include, for example, the Value Integration and Exploration Workshop webinars that I'm offering in June. These are free webinars. They're about an hour long. The dates will be announced shortly next week. So that'll be the week of the 30th of May, the whole week before that. I'm offering these webinars, and they are focused on the values that we have, why it's important to really root into these authentic values, of course, but also how we can actually identify them. And if it turns out that our values are different than maybe, the actions we've been practicing or the choices we've been making, how do we start to make that transition into alignment with our values? So that's the first free resource I'm offering. This is a limited time offer because time is also a finite resource. But I'm offering, at least now, there's 4 scheduled webinars. And again, those dates will be announced next week. So if you're interested, follow my YouTube channel. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. And you can also just email me at danielle.vibrantsystems@gmail.com, and I can share this information directly with you as well. So that's one of the things I'm doing. I'm also writing regular articles and stories, not stories in the fictional sense, but articles, blog posts that really kind of target these factors with a critical lens that's also it's more so philosophical. And it's in part a creative practice of my own to, articulate my beliefs and values around these different topics that are affecting everyone. So if this is another thing that you're interested in checking out, you can go to my website, www.vibrantsystems.ca/stories. The third thing that I want to bring up in this video, and this is new, and so I welcome any and all feedback on what kind of content would be most helpful to nonprofits, community organizations, municipalities. But I want to start creating content about how to do the basic tasks that take your grant application from a finished product that's, it's finished, it's done, but it's pretty standard, to a place where it can be set apart from the others. Because if you're in a position like I am in my consulting career, I have years of experience in the nonprofit industry. I have a master's of public health, and I know how to argue the economic side. I know how to go and find the information from communities, how to do that engagement. I know how to root into my own values, but also create a message that appeals to the values or purpose of the grants we're applying to. And not everybody has access to this information. Not everybody can afford to go, whether time-wise or cost-wise, can go and afford to do a degree focused on this material. And not everybody can afford to hire someone to do this work for them. So I'm going to start releasing video content on these, what's the word I'm looking for? This material, this content, these strategies and exercises, so that you can start building your own skills and own ability to develop your community awareness, your community building skills, and to really leverage that information and those values to get that funding to be able to support your community in a longer term, really actionable and concrete way. And so some of the material that I'm intending to make includes what are the basics of community engagement? How do you actually get feedback from diverse groups of people in your community so that you can meet the needs of as many people as possible? But also, how do you do it in a way that's efficient with your time? How do you leverage, virtual or online resources to reduce some of that physical labor that's needed as far as door knocking goes? How do you emotionally prepare yourself for, encountering people, viewpoints, perspectives, or backgrounds that are different from your own, and in a lot of cases can create an emotional reaction in ourselves? Because that's another huge part of community building at this time, is we've experienced so much division in our society for things that are often really rooted in fear. And it's not that fear is a bad or awful thing and that we should never feel it. It has a very important purpose in our evolutionary, biology, to make sure that we're alive, that we can continue, that we can live happy lives. But we're at a point now where it's at such a high level that it's damaging our ability to connect, our ability to see past surface level differences and remember what's truly important on a collective level, as opposed to how do we just keep our individual selves safe. Because and this is something that I keep coming back to throughout my entire career, throughout the work I'm doing now as a consultant, it really keeps coming back to the fact that humans need each other. We need social groups. We need community. We need to be able to be vulnerable in that community in a way that allows us to be our authentic selves. And we are at a point in society now where that's not easy and that's not necessarily acceptable to a lot of people because those differences, that authenticity, is seen as a threat. And navigating that is something we are definitely not taught how to do. Some people might have natural inclinations or naturally higher emotional intelligence, but it is something any of us can learn. And if you're operating in a nonprofit or community organization or municipal space, having this emotional intelligence and ability to navigate the inherent diversity to humanity is critical now more than ever, because we are seeing those differing viewpoints and that, you know, conflict that's arising from it and that fear that's arising from it. And we need to be able, as leaders, to navigate that in a way that roots us back into what actually matters, our values, and can be leveraged strategically to support our overall well-being as a community. And so, again, I help with all of that type of work. I help with the values alignment. I help with understanding the narratives and stories that drive us. I help with the strategic planning and the engagement. But because that's not something that everybody can pay for, I'm going to start creating content specific to these needs that I have seen throughout my career. So, if you are interested in this content, I really encourage you to follow my YouTube channel. You can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn for smaller bits of information, more digestible pieces of information. But on my YouTube channel, there will be this longer form content that is targeted towards how to do this stuff in a way that's both feasible from a financial and time perspective, but also effective for your organization's goals, whatever that organization may be. So, again, my name is Danielle. I am the owner of Vibrant Systems, a narrative-based consulting company that really, really wants to help your community thrive and make your story as vibrant as it can be, because more importantly, now than ever, we really need our grassroots communities to be strong so that we can help navigate these uncertain times and this chaos that's all around us from the ground up. All right, have a wonderful day, and thank you for tuning in.